Welcome to The Watcher. I'm your cult leader Tom Pot, and I just watched episode 3 of Hawkeye. And before I tell you how much I really like this episode, why don't you give this video a like? Of course, I do this with every episode of the Marvel Cinematic TV shows, at least the live action ones. I'm not doing What If. Maybe I could do a What If I reviewed What If. But either way, please give it a like because we do this every week. And if you don't want to miss future installments, be sure to press that subscribe button. Now that we've got the plug out of the way, why don't we dive into this episode, which I loved. I thought this was fantastic. I thought last week's episodes were really, really good. This was better than those. I actually think, and it might be, I guess, easy to say because of recency bias, I don't know, but this might be my favourite episode of Marvel television so far. I thought it was just really well balanced. There were some great character moments. The action was great. And there were some cool kind of hints and setups for the future without kind of beating us over the head, I guess, to a certain degree. It was a bit more subtle, but then again, with these, everyone digs apart and analyses them to death, so nothing is subtle anymore. And I guess I'm contributing to that problem, so please like. So we start our episode, which is called Echoes, which is very appropriate because we follow the character of Maya Lopez, Echo, a lot in this episode after meeting them very briefly at the end of the second episode. But also it's called Echoes. I guess they're kind of saying like, oh, the echo of Hawkeye lives on in Kate. Clint is seeing the echo of himself in Kate. Or maybe that's all bollocks and I'm just digging into that a bit, I don't know. But we started in 2007, we started in 2012 last week, we're going back further, 2007, whoa! We got a flashback of Echo, who, as we said last week, is deaf. She's in school, and she's kind of getting by on reading the lips of her teacher. Which is interesting. I actually read a news story about that recently, where a child was quite old, and they didn't really kind of realise the child was deaf because they were getting by on reading lips. So, despite all this, she seems very bright. She's getting by in class, no problem. She seems to be working ahead, and the teacher's like, wow, that's very good. But at home, she's talking to her father through sign language. Basically saying like, why can't I go to a desk? And he's like, you'll be better off going here. So it's cool. It was nice they gave that kind of father and daughter moment because it really pays off later on. We also see kind of, aside from her being quite intelligent, we see the physical side of Echo because she's in karate class and she's told by her father basically, it's not about size, it's about speed. And she's very analytical. She's watching the movements. She's watching the person she's going to fight feet. Who seemingly no one can beat this person, and then also she gets up there and easily takes him out. What's more interesting is that her father isn't going to collect her from karate. Her uncle is, and we see a very quick shot of her uncle in something I'm sure is going to be analysed to death. We see a black suit and a hand come in and just give a, one of the grandmother special of just grabbing the cheek and going, which it's going to be analysed to death, this bit. They're going to say, oh, the hand! It's a hand! The hand are in Daredevil! No, well, they are, but obviously that's not what they hint to. The hint everyone is going to pick up on is this is seemingly the first acknowledgement of Kingpin in the MCU. Why do we say that? Firstly, the laugh sounded very much like Vincent D'Onofrio, which, again, it's hard to just go off a laugh, but it did sound like him. The character of Echo, as we touched upon last week, if you want to go back and check last week, we did a lot about this, but Echo's surrogate father essentially is the Kingpin. He's sort of like an adopted daughter to the Kingpin, and she doesn't have a dad at the end of this episode, so maybe that's what this is hinting at. She loses her father. Kingpin kind of takes her in. It's the lovable uncle. In the criminal underworld, as much as you can have a lovable uncle in the criminal underworld. Remember that time he smashed the guy's head in with a car door? The lovable Uncle Kingpin. So that's the only kind of, that's probably the clearest reference we get to Kingpin, but there are a few other things coming up. But very interesting. In the modern day, well, it wasn't quite the modern day, I think, but we see her also boxing. She has a prosthetic leg, which I don't think is from the comics, but fair enough. She's doing exactly what she's doing in kickboxing class, which is she's looking at the way they move and able to easily dispatch people. Which, something worth noting is that in the comics, she has, God, what's the name for it? A photo-reflexive memory, I think it's called. The same thing as Taskmaster. So she can basically copy people's movements. Maybe that's hinting at that. I don't know if they'll go that far, especially because this is a street level hero. Maybe they want to keep it pretty grounded. They also talked about, I say they want to keep it pretty grounded, but they also were talking about how dragons could or could not exist in the MCU, which they do. I thought they were going to say like, hey, did you know New York is built on the bones of a dragon? Remember the Netflix shows? Because that was what was revealed in The Defenders. But we're not done yet with Echo, because in a more grown-up sense, we see her getting ready to creep into a building. This was obviously during the snap, because Ronan is inside murdering a lot of the Tracksuit Mafia guys. I think it was called, the building was called Fat Man Towing or Big Man Towing or something. Again, possibly a nod to the Kingpin. Not that I'm calling you Fat, Vincent D'Onofrio, never change, you're a gorgeous man. But she gets in there and she sees that her father has been killed, stabbed, and basically signs to him, and she's like, it's too late. But he, just before he dies, he makes a lovely good mess of her face, good man, which is that he puts his bloody hand onto her face, leaving her bloody hand print. Did I say hand foot? Hand feet? Hand print embedded on her face, which is a great Easter egg, because Echo is a character who's normally shown with a handprint on their face. If we can show that, I had it in the thumbnail of last week's episode, but that's from David Mack's Echo Vision Quest. She's normally depicted with a handprint on her face. It's often white. Here it's red. That's kind of interesting, and also if they connect it to her dead father, that's brilliant. It makes it really badass. But that's sort of the first 7 minutes. It kind of comes up before the titles, and that's our origin for Echo. Amazing. I immediately like this character. I find them very interesting, which is exactly what you need, because this character is going to carry their own series. I just thought they did a great job making her kind of relatable and human. And honestly, straight away, even though she's positioned as the villain, we obviously know that's not going to last, but they made her sympathetic and made her justified. And what I really like is that the Hawkeye series kind of come, in two parts. And the first part is, Clint is this overlooked everyday guy who doesn't really belong in the Avengers. He's a normal guy. And the other part is him answering for the sins of being the Ronin. And this is part of that, which is great. So it's just feels really connected. Hashtag it's all connected. Remember that in the simple days where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was like, it's all connected, it's connected to the MCU, and then they never did. Oh, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans are fuming right now, all 5 of them. Clark Gregg and his 4 mates. So that was pretty great. Really good intro to the episode. But we pick up then with the Cluster Bro Moving Company, bro. No, but that is where they are. Or at least there's a truck outside that says that. Again, they go all in on the branding of bro. They should give some branding tips to Hawkeye, who's apparently not very good at branding. But anyway, we pick up with Clint and Kate, who are, of course, held captive by the Tracksuit Mafia, which is scary. Thankfully, they're not very savage or mean to them, really, to be honest. I'll tell you who was savage and mean. Kate Bishop to Imagine Dragons. Basically, there's this guy, like, I bought her tickets for Imagine Dragons, and she's not taking me. And she's like, well, you don't have to see Imagine Dragons. And he's like, I like Imagine Dragons. Kate Bishop, you edgy bitch. Leave Imagine Dragons alone. Or don't. I don't care. I have no passionate feelings about Imagine Dragons. But as we mentioned, Echo is the boss of the Tracksuit Mafia. She enters, and she sort of sees Clint's hearing aid and is like, hey, you deaf? And he's like, no, just hard of hearing. And she immediately finds out that, he's not very good at sign language. So she's like, you should go without it. You'd be better off, basically. Which is a kind of a debate, actually, in the deaf community. Some people kind of think that taking a cochlear implant or a hearing aid is sort of, not what you should do, that you should get by in sign language. Which, I'm sure there's points to and against that. It's not really my place to say, to be honest. But there you go. He's going to do it without his hearing aid soon enough anyway, don't worry. But Clint is basically saying, look, Kate is not Ronin. And she's like, well, the Ronin could still be back. And he's like, he's not back, trust me. And they're like, how do you know? And he's like, he's dead. Who killed him? Black Widow. Which, it's kind of... I saw someone compare this to, like, Obi-Wan telling Luke his father is dead. Which, like, yes, he is dead. In a manner of speaking. The man who was your father is dead. Now he's Darth Vader, because obviously Ronin is dead, but he was Clint Barton, and Clint Barton is obviously alive. And I guess Black Widow brought him back, so I guess Black Widow kind of killed him in a certain way. But basically, they're like, isn't it very convenient that the one person that we wanted to kill was killed by a person who was also dead? So there's no one around to vouch for this. And he's like, I was there. But she doesn't believe him. And she snaps and starts attacking Kate. The Tracksuit Mafia pull them apart. And it gives Clint just enough time to be like, wait for my signal. And he breaks out of his restraints and starts running amok in what I think was it like an activity center, or I don't know, like a sort of fun fair warehouse. Is that a thing? But it was a really fun action scene. And like I mentioned last week, a lot of people kind of criticize Marvel TV shows, especially for like their kind of blanding of action scenes. I thought this one was a blast. He's like running across tops of shelves. He knocks the Traxxas Mafia out easily, but then he meets Echo, who he's not going to beat that simply. And it did actually, I'm thinking now, she did look like she did some familiar moves. Maybe this was kind of showing her photo reflexive memory, but I can't vouch for that. But she takes out Clint very, very simply in a hand-to-hand fight. She basically round kicks him in that side of the head, knocking out his hearing aid and stomping on it. But Clint manages to get away from her and grab his bow and arrow. So they're basically saying like Clint is useless without his bow and arrow when he's fighting Echoes. But it is nice to have that kind of balance of power shift. He shoots 2 arrows either side of her neck to kind of keep her pinned to the wall, which was nice of him that he didn't kill her or hurt her. He didn't have the same mercy for other people, because as we see in 2 seconds, he jumps from the kind of balcony in the warehouse into a ball pit and shoots an arrow midair, which grazes the person who is holding Kate hostage, and also breaks her restraint so she can kind of escape and fight off her hostage taker. There's a word I'm looking for there that I don't have right now, but I'll come back to you. So he lands in a ball pit, and as he comes out of that ball pit, he stabs 2 guys with arrows in the foot. So, Echo, you got off really lightly. He manages to escape and go outside. And as he goes outside, they're trying to get a car to escape. And again, Disney, pay David Ayer, because this scene is all from this volume. Hawkeye, Bat Fraction, and David Ayer. Issue 3. I think it was called Cherry was the name of the issue. Came and it's basically this part of the show, right down to some fun Easter eggs. Who else actually shows the physical comics when they do these videos? Come on, man, give me a like, goddammit. I mean, who else is showing you the actual comics as they talk about it? This isn't like some Google image. This is a physical thing. I want names. Who else is doing that? But he's outside. He's hot wiring a car. They see a red Challenger. But he won't do it. He's like, I'm not going to smash that. It's a lovely car. He breaks into a Cadillac instead, which I'm sure is probably also, pretty retro. Probably worth a pretty penny, but Clint has no respect for that. Again, it's a reference to the comic where they drive around in a red Challenger, and he's very annoyed it gets smashed up because it is a gorgeous car. But he's obviously not able to hear right now, so he's telling Kate, like, you're going to drive, come over here and drive. But he doesn't have time, so he has to take the wheel, and she has to shoot the arrows, which is a really fun scene. Again, straight from the comics, taking the variety of arrows in this chase scene as they fight. And it's also kind of, there's a sort of, a symbolic silent passing of the torch here to be like, he doesn't physically hand her the bow, but she's using his bow and his quiver. So, it's a sort of symbolic passing of the torch, or maybe I'm looking into this too much. But it just led to such a fun action scene. It was so great. A lot of it started with a one shot, which was so intense and awesome. As we said, Clint can't hear, but they're still kind of communicating. It's showing their arrow on the one page. Like, he's like, use this arrow, and she's like, I'm using this arrow. Or he's like, you should turn around, and then he's like, I'm going to turn around, it'll be easier. I just said that, we're communicating. Way again, a lot of fun. So he starts shooting, or I should say, Kate, Jesus, it's the cuss sounds at the name. It fucks me up. They run out of arrows, so they have to use trick arrows. Kate starts going through the quiver. The first one she fires is a putty arrow, which makes a mess of their windscreen. That's about it. It's nice and purple. Again, Hawkeye, whatever you want to say about the man's branding, clearly everyone seems to know he likes purple, and he stays with the purple colour a lot, as we'll see later on. But Clint's like, you fire at their tyres, which is a bit late to tell her that. Should have told her that first. Next arrow is an explosive arrow, which is the 4th most dangerous arrow, I'll have you know. I hope you get to see the other ones. The next arrow is a plunger arrow, and she shoots it and it just sticks to the screen. And she's like, she was like, oh, totally useless. Is that the joke? And I wrote ... or is it useless? I was expecting it to pay off. It didn't. It was useless. You zigged when I would have zagged. Thank you for keeping me guessing, Marvel, I guess. Next one is like a weird spiderweb arrow. Like he fired it at a car, and it just latched the things around and pulled it into it, which is very, very specific. But it pulled all these Christmas trees into the car so it couldn't drive. Kind of reminded me of Lethal Weapon, because there's a scene like in one of those movies where they're fighting in a Christmas tree yard. Is that what those are called? I don't know. A corner where they sell Christmas trees. Maybe that's it, because of course Lethal Weapon is also set during Christmas. We have acid arrows, which they use to take out traffic lights, which I guess the idea was like, if there's no traffic lights, they're not going to drive. People will be like, oh, I can't go, or can I? I'm going to stop right now, so they can get by without causing a crash. But then again, it's New York. I get the feeling people will be like, oh, I'm driving here. Oh, is that what happens in New York? I've been there. I don't remember seeing that actually. But either way, I should mention at this point that after all this, the only pursuer they have left is Echo and one of the henchmen. Kate does not get her bow back, but it's in the red Challenger, so they're kind of butting against her. She reaches into the window and gets her bow back, and she has one last trick arrow left, which she shoots into the Challenger, and it shoots out smoke. What color? Purple. Again, he's on brand, guys. Give him a chance. He's cornered the market on purple superheroes. Well done. Except for the Purple Man, I guess, but you know. So that Challenger gets wrecked, which is Clint is annoyed about that already, but they think they're away, but they're on a bridge and there's a lot of traffic, so they're forced to turn around, and it looks like the Tracksuit Mafia has them cornered, and they're kind of coming at them very quickly in a trust me bro moving company truck, or whatever I said the name of the company was, and they only have one arrow left, but Clint has a kind of a trick up his sleeve. He's got a trick arrow. And again, this is sort of like the comic. In the comic, she's got an arrow that she says is useless. She shoots it into the air because Clint is like, release it, don't, like, she has it aimed on a guy. He's like, release it, shoots it into the air, comes back, and it's a boomerang arrow. So I was kind of waiting for like the plunger arrow to pay off here, but instead she shoots a regular arrow. Clint shoots his arrow, which is an arrow from Hank Pym, which makes the arrow expand to this massive, comes right down and explodes the van that's coming at them. I'd be honest, I was like, that's awesome, but it also right through my head, I was thinking of like, Damage Inc. or Damage Control. I'm like, geez, they have to tidy that up. They have to be like, how do we get a massive arrow out of a busy bridge in New York City? And also, you were lucky because there's a subway underneath this bridge. You're lucky it stopped at that and didn't go into the subway track, because they jump off the bridge. They use a kind of arrow to rappel on top of the subway car. Again, they were timed it very well. They could have ended up in front of the thing and got smashed, but they do all right. They end up on top of the subway car, and then they end up inside the subway car in safety on the way home, which leads to a cool moment where, again, Hawkeye can't hear, but Kate is like, oh man, how long can I leave a dog by himself? So I should walk the dog, and that's out of nowhere. Clint is like, oh, you aren't lying, by the way, you are one of the best archers in the world. She's like, oh my god, are you serious? And then he's like, we probably should walk the dog, which is great. I thought they were going to put a really cheesy thing. It's like, wow, he could hear it the whole time. No, thank God. Again, they're keeping me guessing, so thank you for that. Oh my god, I got one of the best Easter eggs here though. At one point, Kate is like trying to stall for time so so Clint can grab some stuff from the car, and she has a USB arrow from the Avengers, the most useless arrow ever, that had one use when he fired it into it wasn't the helicarrier, whatever it was, I'm forgetting the name of it, when he fired it into the computers to hack the thing, the thing with four jets, the impractical thing. But either way, it got an appearance here, and she even fired it, and it bounced off the guy she shot it at. Back then in the apartment, Clint gets a phone call, but of course he can't hear. He assumes it's his wife. But as Kate enters, she's able to hear, and she transcribes what he's saying. And it turns out it's his son Nathaniel, and they decided to punch us right in the fucking feelings, you bastards. So Kate is standing by transcribing what he says, and Nathaniel is a little bit upset that Clint isn't home yet. He's like, are you going to be home for a big Christmas movie night? He's like, I'm not going to be home, I'm a little bit delayed, buddy. And he's like, I'm going to be home next time for a Christmas sweater night. Which, man, the Bartons have fun at Christmas. I'd love a Christmas special at the Bartons. Can we do that, please, Marvel? But yeah, then the most heartbreaking thing, she's transcribing what he's saying, and he basically says, I understand that if you can't make it home for Christmas, Dad. And we all went, oh, no! Make it home, man. We all want to see Clint driving home for Christmas. But he promises, like, I'll be home for Christmas, which is the whole arc of the show. Will he be home for Christmas? If he doesn't, we're all going to be really pissed off, I'll be honest. Like, him dying, not great. Really sad. Him not making home for Christmas, even sadder. Make him get home for Christmas, come on now. But also very bittersweet, he says, it's good to hear your voice, which of course isn't true. well, okay, when I say it's not true, I mean it's like, I'm sure he's saying it is good to hear his voice, but obviously he couldn't hear it. That's what I mean. He wasn't saying it's not good to hear your voice. He's saying it's good to hear your voice, but I can't hear it. Again, kind of sad. Meanwhile, we pick up with Echo, who's talking to her right-hand man, Kazi, who tells her basically, this is a dangerous road you're going down going after the Ronin. Your uncle isn't going to be happy. And she's like, I'm going to do it anyway, motherfucker. She doesn't say that. She doesn't sign that even. I don't think you can sign motherfucker on Disney. What would that be like? That I don't know. I'll have to censor that. But so basically, he's like, your father wouldn't have done this. He put the crew first, and he's like, I'm in charge now. Badass bitch. Then we get a moment that made me bust my ass laughing. So they're waiting on the steps of Chinatown for someone to repair the hearing aid, and we just get a text from Kate to Clint, who's sitting right next to her, and it says, "Good thing they call you Hawkeye and not Hawkier." Such a dumb, obvious joke that I loved. I paused so I could just laugh at it for a sec. Oh, it was a joy. I just love their chemistry, man. I love them. They're really great together. And they've got the hearing aid fixed now, and they're sitting eating breakfast. They have, again, Clint in the reluctant mentor role. He has his hearing aid turned off so he can't hear her, and then she's like bearing his soul to him. He's like, fine, I guess I'll listen. But basically he's like, listen, this isn't a good life. Like, this life of helping people involves a lot of sacrifices and a lot of loss. Basically, it's not worth it. But Kate is insistent that you do gain trick arrows and a cool costume. And speaking of costumes, she pitches him a way to improve his brand and get a cool costume. Of course, we all saw this coming. It's going to be a drawing of the traditional comic Hawkeye costume, and it was. What I did like was that they didn't like go overboard with how great the drawing was, but it was clearly still the thing, because again we saw in the last episode she wasn't a good costume. It wasn't like, you know, Spider-Man was like, I'm gonna sketch my rough idea of her costume, and then it's like, oh look, here's a Todd Farrelly original. So it was kind of cool, and again she's like, maybe I can colour it purple. Again, purple is his brand, man. People know it. Give him a rest. He's got a great brand in the colour purple, not the film, just the colour itself. But yeah, she also was like, oh, why maybe I should put it black with a hood, you know? Oh, Ronan, are you Ronan? And she's like, you're obviously protecting Ronan because it's someone close to you. And he's like, well, I never wore a flashy costume, and here's why. I'm meant to be a ghost. He said he's like spent the last 20 years not being recognised, although he has been recognised a few times at a urinal, remember? So he's failed at his job. His wife would divorce him if he wore a costume, he jokes, but he also says very clearly, I'm not a role model and I never have been. Again, he's still probably feeling a lot of remorse and guilt from the whole Ronan thing, because especially in this moment, it's coming back to bite him. And at this moment, Kate hits back that, like, you can say you're not a role model, but you're helping someone, you're putting you're leaving your family at Christmas to help a stranger who's screwed up. So again, it's nice to see those kind of shades of purple, shades of grey in this character, where it's like, he's good, but he's snarky, he's no one's favourite Avenger, but he's still a good guy deep down, even if we don't see it. And speaking of the Hawkeye costume, it actually turned out that originally they were going to show someone at the LARPing convention in the traditional Hawkeye costume, and they didn't. So, is that suggesting that maybe he's going to get the comic costume? Again, I don't know if I want the comic. It looks really goofy, and I'm sure they can make it work, but it's the eyes pieces, man. It's like weird. I think they call it hawk wings or something in this. It's like, it's just not a great costume, I think. I mean, I'd pop for it if I was like, whoa, there it is, but I don't know if it works in live action. But anyway, that's them having breakfast. We also, you know, get a hilarious moment where it's like, you know, like, she's like, look, I can kind of do this myself. We're in this together. Now please pay for my breakfast because I'm broke. So Clint goes to pay for breakfast, and we also get a cute moment. We didn't get a lot of Pizza Dog in this episode, but he is definitively known as Pizza Dog now, because he's like, we should name the dog, and she goes through these names, and the dog seems very sad and upset when they mention anything except Pizza Dog, and then he smiles, hey, I love Pizza Dog. Cute moment. Meanwhile, we get a little bit of history on the Tracksuit Mafia, which was kind of pointless. It was basically like, they were small, but they grew. Well, yeah, that's most things. I know that, you know, Maya Lopez, Echo is not the boss, there's a boss under them. They have a beef with Ronan because Ronan killed, you know, their suppliers and the upper level of the Tracksuit Mafia themselves. And in doing that, it kind of raises an interesting point that basically he's like, oh, they could be after something from the Avengers compound, but I don't know what. And also the idea that things from the Avengers compound could be out there. Which again leaves a lot of interesting possibility. Is it something they'll return to at a later date? Possibly, but I don't think in any significant detail. What we also get then is basically Kate is like, we should solve that murder. Oh yeah, remember there's a murder going on. We should sort that. Who killed Armand III with his sword? Probably Jack, or wasn't it? So they're like, we're going to go to your mom's home and go into her office, break into her office, look at the files with your login, and we're going to look up the Tracksuit Mafia and Kazi, and we're also going to look up Jack. Jack Duquesne, who I fucked up their surname last week. And they're going through it. We get a few interesting things here. She looks up Kazi, and he's an employee of Sloan Limited. As far as I know, Sloan Limited was in like... It was in something, but it was a subsidiary of, I think it was Archemax. And in Into the Spider-Verse, Archemax is a company owned by the Kingpin. Seems very likely he's coming. Maybe I'm misremembering things there, but I think that's what from memory, I think that is pointing that direction. But of course, she loses her login. She gets locked out of the system. Clint hears a noise and he goes to investigate, only to find a sword pressed against his neck by the sword man himself, Jack Duquesne. Dun dun dun. That's where our episode ends. It was, as I said, a great episode. I loved it. It had a great few character moments. I love the chemistry between these characters. I thought it was funny and entertaining with great action. And, you know, maybe a few manipulative, obvious emotional moments. But I really enjoyed it. Either way, that has been episode 3 of Hawkeye. And that has been this video. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like. As I mentioned, I do these every week. So be sure to subscribe if you want to come back for the next one. Either way, I've been your cult leader, Tompot. Please come back when we do episode 4 of Hawkeye next week and let me know what you thought of episode 3 in the comments below. Please like and subscribe and come back next week, because remember, I'll be watching. Take care.